Hi and welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to talk about key insight 1, the rise of the Agile organization. So what are Agile organizations? So these are organizations which can adapt very quickly because they have the right tools, they have the right capabilities in terms of culture, in terms of technology, in terms of business operations and processes to quickly adapt to both internal environment changes and external market changes. So businesses which have adopted organizational wide policies that enables the organization to be more flexible and respond very quickly to changes in both internal organizational dynamics and external market conditions. So what are the characteristics of an agile organization? So the main things are they have a shared purpose and vision. So majority of the company's employees understand the overall vision and the purpose of existence of the company, the shared purpose. Then within the company, there's flexible and dynamic resource allocation. So whether it's managing the talent, whether it's managing the resources, raw materials, everything, it's very dynamic. So for example, if you have a very scarce talent pool and if you're an agile organization, you will manage according to the priority list of projects that needs to be completed and that delivers a lot of value to the company. And also if you're in the manufacturing industry, you will work very closely with your suppliers and logistical providers, distributors and all the other networks to ensure that your production is running at full capacity without any significant disruption. Then another characteristic is clear flat structure with clear accountable roles. So clear standard operating procedures are there, demarcating what are the roles and also the responsibilities of each role and what is considered a responsibility of a particular role and what is not considered a responsibility. So there's clear boundaries, clear cut boundaries of the duties and responsibilities. And also there's very little bureaucracy, meaning there are no high levels. If you want to get approval, you don't have to go all the way up in the organization hierarchy and then come all the way down with the approval or denial of the request. Then there's open physical and virtual environments. So it's a very open culture, or what we call open door policy, where people can come up to the leadership and speak about the issues that they have with their work, maybe constraints and maybe other challenges without any kind of repercussion on the person, whether it includes firing the people or being subject to bullying and harassment in the workplace or anything of that sort. Then there's rapid iteration and experimentation of delivery. So there's continuous improvement of processes and how we do things within the business. And also there's level of experimentation where you try out everything and understand what's working and what's not. And maybe you come up with an innovative product or service, or you're able to increase the productivity and efficiency as well as reduce wastage. You will be rewarded and also you will be highlighted across the company. So that kind of a culture is there. Then there's a continuous learning culture as well. So people always learn and keep themselves up to date with the best practices in the industry and also share their knowledge with the industry as well for the overall improvement and the benefit of the entire industry. Then there's information transparency and ease of data sharing. So information transparency is a must because people need to know what's happening in the ground situation, especially top management. So having organizational wide information transparency is important in making the right decisions at the right time and also supporting those decisions using data. Then we have data driven decision making. So all the decisions that we take are supported by strong data and not merely on assumptions, opinions and perspectives of people. Then we have things like evolving systems, tools, technologies, and architecture. So the business continuously evolves and evaluates itself, its systems, tools, and technologies, and how it do things in order to be competitive in the marketplace. And finally, we have the implementation of industry best practices. So if you look at every single industry in this world, there are best practices. So these are basically methods and techniques that have been generally accepted as superior to any other alternatives because it produces results much more than all the other methods. Then we are also seeing organizations as living organisms. So there's this entire industry called biomimicry, which is basically understanding, looking into nature and then extracting the principles behind it and sort of emulating the models, the systems, the elements of nature for the purpose of solving complex human problems. So there are lots of examples of this biomimicry. For example, the bullet train, the winglets of the aircrafts, and the honeycomb structure of a beehive. And similarly, organizations are starting to look into this kind of aspects as well and starting to treat organizations as a living organism. So basically organizations are considered as a constantly changing dynamic living organism where each component is interrelated to each other and also sustainable growth is enabled and it adapts to changing environmental conditions. So if you look at a traditional organization, it's something like this pyramid. There's a top-down structure where instructions are received from the top and it's passed on to the bottom. And there's very high levels of bureaucracy. There are so many decision-making levels. You need to get approvals. Even to do the slightest things, there's no autonomy. People aren't trusted with their own capabilities to do their own job. And also, there's poor accountability, meaning responsibilities and roles are not clearly demarcated. So whenever something goes wrong, the game of ball passing or passing responsibility to each other is there. Then siloed business functions. So each business function like the finance and accounting, HR, legal, procurement. So all these business functions act as siloed business units. And most of them have their own way of doing things without syncing in harmony with the overall organization. So how does this change when it comes to organizations as a living organism? So it's something like a cell. So if you look at a cell, it has a nucleus, which is like the command center of the entire cell, that controls, regulates everything that's happening in the cell. So similarly, in organizations, we have data-driven active leadership. The leadership plays an active role in terms of engaging with the employees and understanding the grassroots level situations and also supporting the employees to do their job. There's constant engagement and two-way communication. Rather than passing down the decisions and getting the employees to do the work, information, data, and analytics also flow upstream so that the leaders can understand what's happening in their business. Then there's dynamic resource allocation. So the employees are allocated in a dynamic manner. For example, if there's a critical project, more resources are allocated. And once the project is completed, employees are allocated very quickly to the next high priority project. And in the manufacturing industry, there's also things like dynamic resource allocation. So the ability to adjust very, very quickly in terms of resource allocation is there. Then we have frictionless flow of data, information, and insights. So there's access to organization-wide data for everyone. For example, if you're in the product development team, you have access to the procurement and the logistics team. Let's say, for example, there was a lot of issues in terms of packaging the product. And there were lots of complaints from the customer support agents or the customer service function, saying that there are lots of complaints from the customers about damaged products being ordered. So you can check with the logistics team whether the packaging was done right. And even you can get feedback from them and maybe change the dimensions of the packaging, maybe add more padding and bubble wrap to the packaging to ensure that it doesn't break during transit. So things like that can be easily done when there's frictionless flow of data, information, and insights. Then boundaries are less important because there's a lot of trust in the organization and there's no passing responsibility that that person did this, so we don't have to fix this. So that's sort of a mindset. So it's basically when you see a problem, you will fix it. If you don't know how to fix it, you will learn how to fix it and fix it. So that kind of a culture is there within these kind of organizations. And also end-to-end accountability of teams. So just because there's no boundaries, and just because there's trust, it doesn't mean that there's no accountability. Very high levels of end-to-end accountability from the start to the finish is there for all the business operations and all the business functions within all the teams. Well, that's about it for Key Insight 1, the rise of the Agile organization. I'll see you on another lecture.